Recording in progress.
You know what I'm going to ask you to do?
Be happy to. This is a special meeting, budget workshop on Wednesday, March 30th, 2022, starting at 7 o'clock. The rules of conduct for a hybrid virtual meeting are as follows. This is a web-based call, so the meeting is operating under the following procedures. This session will be both video and audio recorded. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will generally be keeping video on themselves throughout the meeting. If a member of the public creates an audio or video disruption, they may be manually ejected from the meeting upon the recommendation of the staff or the chair. Public input before the meeting, please email your comments to publicinput@columbiact.org within 24 hours before the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, we can come to order now.
I have a question. Do we know exactly who's logged in and have a record of that?
Yes,
Whether it be phone?
for the minutes, it is Sue Epstein and Stephen Postemski.
Rich.
Allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Jeff, you can see on the right side right here, who's participating remotely. And their names right there.
Anything else? No. Okay, let's dive right in. Now, you have requested the library's audited documents, financials, and we got that. Do you have an issue with that?
No, I just want to be able to go through it and see exactly what was going on.
Okay,
So I don't have any issues with it.
okay, Sue, you can go to the bar now. Nobody's challenging your request.
If you want to do this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
The minutes of the last meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Tested. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, a little bit on procedure. Usually we have 3 votes, one for the Board of Ed budget, and to accept it or to change it, one for the allocation to the capital account, and one for the Board of Selectmen operating budget. And we eventually get a motion, those 3 motions, and that tells what we're going to put for the hearing. Now, we have an agreement with both the Board of Selectmen and with the Board of Education that if we make changes to their budget, they have the right to request a meeting the following week to challenge or present information that might make us change our minds. We don't have to, but we extend that courtesy. If that happens, at some point, we will decide what we want to present at a public hearing, and that hearing is on the scheduled meeting somewhere. After that hearing, at that hearing, the public has a right to get input. And immediately after the hearing, there is a FiPAC meeting where we take into consideration anything the public might have said. And we take another vote whether or not to stand pat or to make changes that reflect what we heard from the public. And after that night's meeting, whatever we decide will be sent to a town meeting for the vote that either approves or disapproves of the budget. That's it. Now, I don't remember any challenges to the Board of Selectmen budget. I don't know if anybody have had a chance to go through. Anybody has any issues they want to raise? You don't have to. I haven't. Did not hear any challenges to the amount that we're allocating to capital, whether or not we should take anything out or add anything in. And the only person that raised questions was, I guess, me about the Board of Ed budget, that I needed a chance to make myself comfortable. And that's why I started digging into this thing together, which Ben was nice enough to update after she had updated her for the Board of Ed expenditure report. I don't know if anybody, after looking at that, Stephen, you at least tried to grab it and did you come up with any conclusions or any, find anything?
No, it's fairly flat. It was, when I just took what you sent me, because I finally had real numbers, I mean, not real numbers, but actual cells and data. And I was able to budget it, look at it, see if there's trend lines. Most of them are very flat. That's nice to see. What I did was major sections in the wage, wages and benefits, services, maintenance, education, fuel and miscellaneous, and admin. Admin had one big low year. I forgot the line right. It was equipment, I believe, for a big number, 150,000. Other than that, everything's fairly flat. If anybody wants it, I can email it to them. If they want to visualize it, but numbers are the numbers.
Anybody else? I'll tell you what jumped out and grabbed me. I'll do a little history first. Years ago, actually not that many years ago, when it was law here, we realized that because of the minimum budget requirement, the state was forcing us to budget more, put more in the Board of Ed budget than the superintendent and then the Board of Ed wanted. They actually drafted a letter, sent it to the state commissioner of education, said, can we please go below the minimum budget requirement because we don't need the money? They said no. So we basically wound up with a budget that was higher than what was needed to run the school. Stephen, the old man, remembers. Okay, so that sort of ties into what you're saying, Stephen, that if it's flat, then is that extra margin still in there? It's a question of something to be considered when you're analyzing what's going on. The other thing is, if you look at the preliminary estimated variance column, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the left, there's some big numbers in there, like there's $416,000 variance. What that says to me is that there is more money available than is needed to run the routine operations of the school. The money at 416, I assume is going to be spent for some legitimate purpose. I don't question that. It's going to be spent for some legitimate question, but the fact is there's enough margin in the money available to both run the schools and do an additional $416,000 project, and also on the equipment line to purchase $92,000 more in equipment than what we had budgeted. So that says that the current year budget maybe wasn't because of carryover of those margins. Maybe the current year budget was higher than we might have said it had we been allowed to reduce things. And if the current year budget is high, then the fact that we're flat says maybe this proposed budget is high. That's my wheels turning. I can't really conclude that that's true. I'm just saying that raises questions to me that I think we ought to be made comfortable with, and that's basically where I am. If we have that much money floating around this year, how can I be convinced that it's not also going to be floating around in the next budget? That's not a question, but that's where I am. And if anybody think that logic is stupid, say so. If you go along and you have the same questions, indicate that, or say or do something.
Renee, do you mind if I ask a question?
I don't know. I hope you do.
Okay. We have a couple new people on the board,
Okay.
and I'm wondering whether they're familiar with the minimum budget requirement. And you understand what that means. It's a state statute that we can't reduce the education budget. So are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I think that was brought up in the second meeting,
I mean,
and I think Kelly brought it up and asked that it be explained to people like me who were
okay.
newbies.
And
So that you can't go below the number that you had in the previous year, you must
We must continue the study.
And are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
And I mean, my reaction to that is simply that, first off, I think it puts an undue burden on towns. But I also understand the philosophy or the rationale behind that, because they don't want towns to kind of arbitrarily come in and reduce education budget, because that's one of the most important things that we do. So we have to have a really good reason to reduce an education budget.
No, you don't.
Okay.
So what you're saying, if I'm putting words in your mouth, please correct me, but so you're saying that we're gonna be we have currently around $400,000 in extra expenditure, an extra revenue in the educational budget, as it looks like at the end of this year.
It's not revenue. They're gonna.
Not revenue, but like
Unspent.
unspent money.
That was available and now they found a good purpose for it. So, yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't planned at last year's budget time. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
So.
Did we find out, one of the questions last week
Yeah.
was, there were incentive offers for early retirement that could be impacting the salaries for the next budget, or is that?
So can I speak?
Well, that's, I'm asking if I can speak to ask, yes.
Yes.
So this year, there's been numerous anomalies this year. One of them is there's been a number of staff members who have left this year they've been replaced at a lower cost. That's one. Two, there was, I think, about 3 or 4 leaves that were given out for various reasons, and they were unpaid.
3 or 4 what? I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Leaves, like medical leaves, I think they're all medical leaves. One of them was up to 12 weeks, another was half the year, another one was like 8 weeks, so that's quite a bunch of savings. There was also a change in special ed tuition. There were some students that were planned to be in this year's budget, and they opted, either they aged out or the placement changed, so they left the program. They moved, that was what they moved. So that was some savings in both the tuition and the transportation line. Some of the savings is also coming in the health insurance line, because with the resignations, there's been a change in enrollment. So we definitely had at least 2 families leave this year. That's at least $34,000. And some came in, new hires didn't take the insurance. So there's more savings there. So we'll know more probably about the enrollment probably in June, see if anybody comes on board, as well as get a final hopeful health insurance rate. Right now, that's an 8% increase. I'm trying to think of what else there was.
What about the boiler?
The boiler, we haven't gotten a number yet. We're hoping to have that by the end of the week. So that could, it could run, depends if they can repair or they're gonna replace. It's a very old piece of equipment. And that's the issue they're having, is whether they can just do parts and replace, or they're gonna have to do a full-blown replacement. So I think Mike said by Friday, he was told that we would get it. So that will be presented to the Board of Ed on Monday. So trying to think of what the other ones, but those are the main drivers right now that's definitely pulling these numbers, especially in the tuition line, is pretty much the change in special ed placements. So. And next year that's projected to go up, which Barb has some wonderful news. Would you like to let?
Yesterday, we had 3 students that are moving into district with IEPs, special identified with disabilities. Today, we had another one. Of those 4 students, 2 already have paraprofessional services attached to them. There are significant needs that are not proposed in the rest of this year's budget nor next year's budget.
What are the estimated costs?
So I haven't gotten all of their documentation yet, but a paraprofessional will be, 30,000-ish.
Just the salary alone.
With salary, so 50. And one is a high school student, so I'll be paying tuition plus special education costs, so that's going to be an extra 70 potential $1,000 on that student. So these, you know, we do a budget, some districts do a budget and they put in, you know, what ifs, like students, they sometimes will put a budget with like a student A and a student B as a what if. We don't do that here. We do what we know at the time. And this was yesterday and today.
But we could, I mean, if you look at your numbers here, net, it looks like an extra 300,000. If you don't find ways to spend that between now and the end of the year on other things that you hadn't budgeted for, you could have
So
some of
moving-
that money put into your non-lapsing account. And it could be used depending on when you figure out what those students are gonna cost. You could use the non-lapsing fund for that rather than putting them into the budget because you don't really know what they are. We're probably gonna finish the budget cycle before you know that answer. So we could.
Those
You know.
students would have been in the budget had they come a month or two earlier, but
But now
Won't be,
But
so
now
they
they're
could be-
anticipated.
Not really, because we don't know what they are. I mean, they said they're coming, we don't know what the numbers are.
3 are coming.
the registration was worked on today. So
Okay, but we're already in the middle, almost to the end of our budget. I mean, we're not gonna wait 2 or 3 or 4 weeks to find out what that's gonna be when we have the availability of the non-lapsing account.
Yes, but for this year, though, we will have to have those funds here. So, and next year, I think we'd be working within whatever budget is given before they're gonna the non-lapsing account. That's how, that was the plan.
To increase the budget, to ask for more money
No, they
instead of
weren't gonna
taking it
change,
out of.
we weren't gonna change the budget. Based on our conversation.
Are they coming in mid-year?
So we could just look in within the budget once it passes to see what's available, and then later on in the year, they can come back and request a FiPAC to approve and approve money from the budget. Or we can do it up front. You know, there's different options with the non-lapsing account.
No, but like my question is, are they coming mid-year?
Monday.
They're coming like Monday.
So they're starting before the end of the year, okay, that's what I was confused about. And so you were anticipating using this additional, the revenue to cover the surplus, to cover some of that.
This year.
Ernie, can I make a comment? I would rather see the Board of Ed set aside the price of a new boiler than patchwork fix the old one.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
what we're
then
waiting to
next
find out.
year,
That's what we're waiting to find out.
I hope you're talking about the price of the boiler. I mean,
So what's the 416,000 of the bill isn't in here?
That's tuition.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It didn't.
not,
No, we don't have the board yet.
Budget line, are 114, second from the
Okay.
bottom,
I mean, what-
114.
So that, some of that
Yeah.
spending this year had to do with, they started a STEM program. So they're buying equipment, furniture for that. And there's also a new technology teacher, so he needs some equipment in his room, furniture and things. So that's what some of that money is being used. I'm trying to think of what else they bought this year, but there was some, I think there was some other furniture bought this year in one of the classrooms also.
Okay, so I need to back up that the extra spend on repairs and maintenance was only 102,000.
At
I
this,
was looking at the wrong line. And 92,000 more in the equipment and was budgeted. But tuition dropped. But that's about 416,000. Or people opting out of outplacement or getting moved out of outplacement.
But if new people come in, they'll use some of that that they save for the ones that left, so net, it shouldn't be any different this year.
Yeah, I doubt that the 3 new are gonna be 416.
No, they won't, be. But I'm
So-
saying it's not, we're not gonna need more money in this physical before June.
No.
Just next year, how much do we allocate for special ed? Or that,
Good question.
are they proposing to increase their budget this year? coming up.
No, I haven't heard that.
It's really just occurred in the past.
Right,
24
no,
hours,
it's
so.
right, which is why we could use the non-lapsing fund for so late in the day. And, you know, we have 400,000 in that account, three, and have not used a nickel of it since we created it, no, so.
Everybody's looking down at the table.
Does that, do the assistants, the IEP professionals, do they go into certified salaries or into the
So the
instructional, I mean, the professional services?
no, the teacher, well, if there's certain services that Barb brings in, like EastCon, it'll be professional services.
Okay.
They do have teachers that are in the certified salary, and then they have the paraprofessionals, which are the non-certified salary.
Okay. So that one line, professional services, is probably the only line item that
They brought in,
increased like 20%.
yeah, there was a behavior specialist that were brought in this year, and fortunately, some of that was saved. We got some $50,000 of the grant money to bring that cost down.
Ernie, I think what this shows is a more scientific approach to looking at the numbers when it sort of dovetails with what we have sort of anecdotally felt, that there's usually a little bit of money left over at the end of every year. And it may be, you're right, that it was from that 250,000 from when we lost the one special ed student, we tried to reduce the budget and couldn't. And typically, the board has given back that roughly 250.
Well, yeah,
So you're right, every year, even if we're flat, we're still carrying forward that 250.
yeah, the problem is, yeah, you're carrying this like money you can never really spend for anything else.
Right.
And also remember, I think Bill says we're probably at some sort of edge where if you don't make a budget reduction this year, all our potential deductions are gonna disappear and we'll be stuck forever.
So should we take a really hard look at some of those options of reducing as much as we can, depending on where we are?
I think so, but I'm not a dictator, so.
No, I think that it has merit. We should be careful and think about that.
And you should remember that, again, the American Relief Funds are only going to be around for maybe one more year. And that's what's helping this budget, and as well as, there is not, in the next year, they will they will be doing union agree negotiations again for the certified staff. So that's coming up within the year. So that's, you gotta think about that too.
Yeah, the other thing to think about is, see that guy over there? I think he would appreciate if we make a settlement at the decision and everything coming together and says, yeah, take a shot at reducing the budget, and maybe you risk violating MBR. At that point, it will be up to him to call his group together and say, hey, what we put together was wrong. I'm gonna call a meeting and fix it. And no, he would be willing to do that, I think we can count on him without asking, putting him on the spot, that he won't support us if we make a wild decision.
Mhm.
But if we make a reasoned decision, I suspect he has our back, so.
So here's like, I have two scenarios. One, we continue, I think MBR is a bunch of hooey anyway, because it's appropriated money, but when they don't spend it, they give it back to the town. So MBR doesn't mean anything to me, but that's me. So there's one thing, we can continue with our agreement that we've had with the Board of Education, where we send the money as the budget that they want. When, and it's always been when, there's money left over, they have loyally given probably 85 to 90% of it back to the town. The other 10, 15%, they have used it for maybe some capital stuff or some things they didn't foresee. But for the most part, I feel good about the agreement that we have always had. Until there's a time that they don't, but I'm a trusting guy. The second thing is, let's find out in Ernie's scenario, where and how much we can reduce the MBR just in entitled. That's what it is, it's just entitled, because if another student who needs $250,000 worth of special needs or special care comes to here, we go back to the general fund if it's not in the school budget, or the non-lapsing if it's not currently in the school budget. We find the money. Last time we found $400-something thousand, and it came from the general fund. So if we can find true deductions that are lawfully there, that we can take advantage of, and you want to maneuver the MBR down to where we can, and have it at that threshold, again, doesn't mean anything to me, because they give the money back, or we'll have to pay over and above if somebody moves in. And I have no problem with that. What I don't want is a fight with the state and a penalty that we incurred, which cost us $250,000. Some time ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when MBR was out there, they said, oh, you didn't pay enough. Not only that, you get penalized. And it hurts.
And I think that was Ernie's point.
Yes, I understand that. So what I'm saying is, you move MBR down, if we legally can do it, we have the proper deductions, or you leave it alone and we continue with our agreement with the school.
No, slight correction, there was no penalty. It just said, this is what you should have budgeted, you didn't, so.
Well,
budget that or
okay.
allocate amount.
And if we didn't, they were gonna penalize, but yes, it wasn't a penalty, we had to make it true.
It wasn't.
There was a penalty.
No, was it?
It was twice the amount of.
I thought it was, but it doesn't matter. I had to go to the town, or at that time Carmen had to go to the town and say, sorry, we messed up, we lost, the state played their game, played their hand, and we had to come up with, I believe it was $256,000. Whether it was to true us up or penalty or no penalty, it hurt to go to the general fund and the people of the town and say, we made a mistake. So that's why I'm very careful.
Yeah, but-
Hopefully-
Right, but I think also your agreement, your summary of the agreement isn't exactly right. They don't get back most of it. I think it's mostly the tuition, right? That's what they get back.
No,
Under
they
the
have,
gentleman's agreement.
we have the gentleman's agreement that only addresses tuition, but they include like more than that.
Right, well, if they don't, that's not what the agreement is, but they sometimes do.
It's over the years, money that was unspent, the Department of Education has come back into the general fund. And it wasn't just tuition, it was simply money that was unspent.
But they don't stick strictly to the budget and then give everything else back. If they
Well-
may spend some extra stuff, like they did for the STEM program.
And I agree with
So,
that,
I'm just-
but
I'm just saying,
they
it's not
also
that it all
have,
comes
they
back.
also have to be held accountable for how they spend their money.
The stuff
And
that
I don't think they've ever spent money that wasn't needed. We still have gotten back the unspent money, whether it's tuition or anything else, from the Department of Education.
Yeah, that's not an issue. And I will correct correct myself, there was a penalty. We did pay a penalty 2 times. And the reason for that was the law was so stupid. Even when they were drafting the law, the then Commissioner of Education protested because he says if somebody accidentally doesn't budget enough, this law doesn't provide a way for them.
Right, and that's what we have. Our budget was secured and voted on before the state, and I believe the state went over their timeline, so nobody could come up with it.
Yeah, that's why
But we got penalized. Doesn't matter.
actually, that law was actually finalized 2 whole years after we set that budget. It was so, they were so late finalizing it that the people who penalized us incorrectly because the law was changed after they calculated the penalty.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
So I just want to comment, like the STEM program that you're talking about, that wasn't done on the slide, that actually, so that had, buying that material and stuff replaced a gifted and talented teacher that was not replaced. It was being crafted to work with the science and technology teachers to outfit an area so that a position of gifted talented teacher was not replaced.
Yeah, and I wasn't criticizing it,
No,
I was just saying that there are ways that, money does get spent on things as they come up over the year or whatever, so it's not that every penny that wasn't budgeted comes back, or that wasn't needed for the budget. Some of it does, and a lot of it does, and I think the board has been very good about that through the years, so I'm not complaining about it, I'm just saying it's not 100%. Whereas if we could
So
take a
do-
little bit less out of the, I've always been, and everybody knows this about me, I'm always saying, take less out of the general fund. If we have to go back to it because we have to, then we do, but why spend it before we know that we need it? If we know that we could reduce it a little bit, let's take less out of the general fund up front and only do it if we need to.
Okay,
That's my perspective.
going back to that penalty thing, the state has clarified their position so that you can do an additional allocation without penalty. And you started by saying, do you have any idea what we could do? The answer to that is there's no way we can predict it. I've tried my hardest to figure out.
I guess then my question is, why'd you bring it up? But I understand. Yeah.
The only thought I had was that we know what the margin was last year or this year or whatever. That was what,
200 something.
200 something.
Yeah.
So maybe something in the neighborhood of 200 as a starting point for discussion. Jeff, say something.
I'm still thinking on that one, but if we pull 200, you're talking about 200,000 out of the BOE budget. And it goes back to the general fund there, and then if they need something, they approach us. That's what we're talking about.
That's the one scenario, yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that. It's, you know, if we'll get away with it and the state's not gonna bother us about it, it's fine by me. The other thing too is if we just let it ride with the way they've been going, with the expenses that they see coming at them for the boiler, the new people coming in, there's already a certain amount of money there that's gonna get spent anyway. Coming up in this budget, so, you know, I'm torn, do I just leave it where it's at? And trust them to do the job that they've been doing all along for the past number of years? And maybe they don't come back to us and ask us for more money, because they have.
You just went around in a big circle. didn't you?
Yes, I did. That's comes back for it. It's doing, I mean, it's just kind of like the NBR, and did they find us or they didn't, it's just one thing. Sure. And if we've been flat all these years, you know, we can go to the citizens and still come in with a budget reduction, and the school operates fine, and everybody's happy, it works.
Well, the only reason I'm pressing a little bit is, again, if you get in the cycle of budgeting it at the beginning of the year, getting it back at the end of that year, re-budgeting it the next year.
Right, but I think we're gonna see that cycle stop.
How-
No, well, I think expenses are gonna go up. I think our transportation, our fuel oil, our electricity, a lot of expenses are gonna go up, and next year we're gonna see it. So we're not gonna get as much back in the coming years. So I think, you know, probably in 3 years, we might be pushing that MBR.
Oh, we might.
Oh, yeah, with the way things are going and the projections, absolutely. I'd say absolutely.
Well, think about the projections. Again, I was sounding like a negative Nelly here. But remember, we looked at the projection of the capital allocations. And we said, one, it would be nice to have as much money as we can get our regular little figures on.
I understand that, but I think we're gonna see more students move into
I agree.
into this community. I think we're gonna see enrollment go up, and while the high school might drop off for another couple of years, you know, we've only got a couple more years of high school drop off before that starts to increase too.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're making an argument for setting a budget here and waiting for the need for it catches up,
Yes.
rather than say we're going to be and increase your allocation as needed.
Well, yes, I say stay flat, wait till we need to increase the allocation and then start to move it. Because actually, we could be dealing with the same number all the way across. If it comes back to the general fund and they ask us for it, we're giving it back. So why not just leave it there, let them do their thing without even having to involve us in it?
All right, say something. I'll come back to you, but I'm gonna make you talk.
Well,
Ernie, you mind if I say a couple things?
No, not at all.
Okay. And I agree with a lot of what Jeff said. I do think that people are gonna move into town. I think our education budget is gonna necessarily go up. But I think we should act proactively rather than reactively. I think we should anticipate some of that. And that is really up to the Department of Education to project how that's going to impact Columbia and impact the cost and things like that. So I think we should simply try to fund, not worry about cutting costs. I don't know if there's a need to have a big increase in cost, but I don't think we should worry about cutting costs. I think we should just worry about making sure that we do a good job at meeting the educational needs of Columbia kids.
Nobody's saying that we shouldn't.
Yeah.
The question is, do we need, right now, is about $500,000 in, the two hard costs of tuition and transportation, there's about an extra 500,000. Obviously, that's gonna go down a little bit, because there's a couple new special ed kids that have come in towards the last 3 months of the year, so that 500 might be a little bit less. But why are we budgeting for that much money when we're not gonna spend it?
You know, I worked at DCI and I placed a lot of kids in residential treatment, Columbia kids. And I know how much that can impact education budgets. And the way it works is that the local educational entity is responsible for the educational costs, and the state is responsible for the board and care costs. But that can, if it's educational costs, and if those kids we have to pay for it, then that could amount to a lot of money. So we have to anticipate that. And if we can project those kids ahead of time, then it's important for us to do that. That's all.
You're saying that's budget right now for what might happen in 2024.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't rule that out. We shouldn't ignore that possibility.
Well, we're not gonna ignore it because
We should,
next March, they're gonna ask us to do a new budget.
right.
And if there are new people with new needs, that's when you address that.
And I agree with that. We should be doing that based on the facts that we have and the kids that we have in the system now. Trying to project it, but we have to understand that those things are gonna happen with any school system, that's all.
Oh, right.
so the question you're trying to ask is, should we lower it down so that we don't lower it by around $200,000? So that we can get the school budget down to a point or whatever the standard point, so that we don't violate this NPR law.
Right.
And
Still provide what we
still
need.
provide what is needed, yes. Now, is that gonna affect the monies that are currently in the budget now?
For the current school year?
Yes, no, okay.
For this year, no.
And so I'm assuming that the monies we are anticipating, the monies that are in the current school year that are extended, which is around $400,000. Part of that's gonna cover these new students that just popped up
For this year.
for this year. And then part of it's also gonna or all of it will hopefully cover, there will be enough that will be able to cover the boiler, assuming we're replacing the boiler completely. We just don't have a number on that yet.
But that could be in the capital budget, right? For the school.
Well, if it could be covered with this, I have no problem with that. Money that's currently available is just being used.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
That's currently already been budgeted for this year.
But the money that's being used this year and the money that was allocated for the Board of Education is also the MBR. If we gave them $5 last year, that's the MBR. So next year going forward,
No, there's a calculation that I said.
on the students, but we haven't seen students drop. We don't have a drop in,
Students, the population of students keeps
Sure.
growing.
it's growing,
An
so
all-time high.
I remember the,
Yeah, but we get a deduction based on the tuition we pay to outside high schools.
no, I forgot that, I was just looking at the growth.
Are we getting anywhere?
Are we gonna make a decision tonight?
Well, then you can, if you're done budgeting for 2024, we can get back to. Get back to the-
Not quite that far.
Where are we on a final determination of healthcare costs? Do we have a final number or was it still in flux?
It's in flux and it's all what the state decides.
And it will be,
Maybe you must be not here to the end of April, May. Right now, it's an 8% increase.
and that's what's in the budget.
It's in there.
Okay, so if it is 12, we're under. It's 4, we're over, but it's not likely to be 4.
No, I doubt it's gonna go.
Any likelihood, do you have a sense of whether it's gonna go above 8?
It's different because right now it's the state, so they're the ones who are driving it. So we have no choice. Our broker,
Healthcare costs increases.
there's nothing we do about it. The big if right now is whether the fuel costs are gonna come down. 'Cause right now, everything's budgeted at $3 a gallon and right now it's over $4, So, you know, we haven't even called East River to say, what's the latest quote, because so we put it at 3, just on the town side too, hoping it comes back down.
I'm sure that's a realistic hope, but we probably should expect it to be closer to 4.
Yeah.
If it's at 4 now, I don't think it's gonna go down much in the next year.
I mean, we might get a discount for the volume, but,
Okay, let's do a temperature check.
Yeah.
Was that up?
If we're looking to cut $200,000, or that's, say that's the number for the Board of Education budget, where can the Board of Education cut that money?
That's likely staffing, and that would be classes, a lot of money.
But, yeah, that's always the answer. It's
Well,
always.
I was gonna say SOP on that, but
Yeah, I guess,
Anything else it can
Your
come from?
pencils doesn't add up to $200,000.
well, the problem I have is
Paper.
if you had asked that question last March, what answer would you have gotten?
same answer, probably.
But actually, it would have been tuition.
Yeah.
Is in fact where it came out of.
Again, this is what I think, I get a temperature check. But looking at these numbers and taking into account how the last MBR calculation went, I lean toward that $200,000 reduction. That's just mine. I'm looking at the whole picture and then there's a gut feeling. And along with that gut feeling is the realization, I would say that if we do that, I think the last thing you should do is make an immediate cut to staffing. Because the town will support you if you can't find any other way to make that up. And you come back and say, I tried my hardest and I can't find any way to make that up. Then there will be an additional appropriation. So you have to nod your head to that. So, yeah. I think the town has your back, and again, I'm looking at the long-term interest of the town in terms of our ability to have some flexibility in use of that money. That's what drives me as much as anything, the long spending, dealing with the stupidity of where we are. I sort of appreciate the purpose, but the way it's managed is just awful. And you just don't get any, they don't give exceptions, they don't give breaks, even when you say you don't need the money, they say you have to. You have to put it in this pot anyway.
Yeah.
That just,
It's gun to your head.
Yeah, that's fine. If things work out, if we do that, and if things work out, then there's another dent or another little bucket money we will have against the, all the capital improvements that we dredged out this year by, the board of selectmen forcing people to come up with a real complete plan. Okay, I'm done talking. Kelly, temperature check.
I'm in favor of doing a detailed analysis and looking at ways to reduce the budget. I'm looking at the 331 that they have extra this year. I think 200 of 331 is not extraordinary. Maybe it's not a full 200, maybe it's 150, but I'm in favor of trying to find ways to whittle away what
Well,
we can.
that wouldn't be us.
Well, no, but I mean, picking a number, I
Okay,
think
picking a
we should have a
number.
reasoned analysis of what number we reach,
Of course,
and then it's up to them. I know to do the actual numbers, but.
I'm just picking only because of the new people.
Always happy to be made an example of her.
Okay. Okay, Art.
I'm in favor of that.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, we can do that. It's not a problem there. I'm just wondering if it's, you know, if we're gonna end up just pulling it out a little later on.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean,
That is not a big problem.
We, absolutely, and we can get a little interest on 200, whatever the number is.
Dick.
To tell the truth, I'm not sure yet. I'd like to hear a lot more from Barbara about how that would impact the school
Okay.
and what cuts are gonna
Let
be.
me interrupt you. Remember how I started the meeting? That if we decide to change anybody's budget, the Board of Education has a right to demand the
Well,
follow-up meeting the
yes.
following week and justify or challenge the decision.
No, and I heard that, but to tell the truth, before I make a decision about whether I support that, I want to hear more from Barbara about how that would affect the school system.
Well, ask
And
her.
how, and where the cuts would come from. And the other thing, by the way, is I think we need to give Judy Jordan a chance to have her input in this also.
Stephen.
Just to clarify, Kelly's recommendation that we're acting or discussing is to do a more detailed analysis of various line items that may require us to do a request or vote for a reduction. Is that what I'm agreeing to?
Say that again.
Kelly's, I thought she said,
You two talk to each other.
I'm pro doing a detailed analysis to determine if a budget is doable. A reduced budget of $200,000.
We have no control over the line items. The only thing we have is the bottom line. You can look at and go across it line by line and say, well, you know, and try and find discrepancies, but still, you can't say, well, you can't do floor times this year. That's up to them.
Dick, did you want to ask your questions tonight? Or
I know,
So you can put me on the spot. I'm not prepared to say where we would find $200,000 right now. When I said it would be likely staffing, that's what it would be likely, because $200,000 is a lot of money, so, you know.
so I would like a
supplies-
more detailed response from the school system about how that would impact them and where they would cut the money from.
That's the
Now, I know,
second
I
step.
recognize fully that we don't have control over how they spend their money. But I do want to have a better understanding of how that would impact the school system and our kids' education, that's all.
Well, what you're saying, and remember how the process works. If we lay a week for a presentation, and the presentation comes back and we decide to do an adjustment anyway, then we need another meeting the week after that to get more detail.
You know, really, my biggest issue with how this board makes a decision is that oftentimes we have people come up and say, let's cut $200,000, or let's cut for $500,000 without really understanding how that's gonna impact the services that are provided to the town. All I'm asking is that I want to have a better understanding. If I'm gonna,
Okay, how do
Over that, I
you
wanna have-
propose you get that?
let me
understanding?
finish.
Okay,
If we're gonna do that, then I simply want to have a better understanding about how that's gonna impact the town.
well, how do you propose we make you feel more comfortable, or somebody make you feel more comfortable?
Well, because I think Bob or someone in the school system has to explain to me how that's gonna impact education.
Well, what I said was, if we do this, they have the right to come back next week and do exactly what you're asking for.
Well, I recognize that, but rather than go through that whole lengthy process, why not ask them ahead of time before we say we're gonna vote for that?
Well, that's the same process. Well, you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. I have two questions. Which might find where this $300,000 currently is. I'm not sure, why is there a $313,000 overage on special education? What happened this year did that occur?
So we had somebody age out who wasn't proposed to age out.
Okay, that's
So-
one.
Which was a lot of money.
All right.
Sometimes special education, if somebody is residentially placed, it's $250,000.
I understand that.
If they're in a program, it could be about
Okay,
average of
so-
100. So I had an age out.
Yep.
I had somebody move.
Yep.
Actually, I had a huge expenditure move out of our high school, out of state.
So if they had stayed with the program, we wouldn't have any of that $313,000. Okay, so thank you for answering that. Now, they're gone. We have 3 new special ed students starting on Monday. And correct?
And they get other.
What do we-
And if they're like.
And a
in that
potential 4. Now, they're not represented in next year's budget,
They're not.
are they not? Do we know the extent of the needs that they have?
Not yet, not totally yet.
I have one has a current programming, including a paraprofessional.
Okay, so I heard 50,000 plus 70,000, that's 2 kids.
And then the other one that I don't have the in place is somebody on the autism spectrum who will require another paraprofessional.
Okay, so that's another 50,000.
Minimum.
Okay, and so 70 and 100,000, $170,000. That leaves you about 130,000 shy of your special ed, what's currently there. And we may have a 4th child coming in. So here's what I would recommend. If it was me. You really don't have 313 because you had kids move out. That's where your huge savings is. 3 kids are coming in and possibly a 4th, which is gonna eat up some of that 313. I heard about $170,000.
3 start Monday.
So what I'm asking you to do is, if you're looking for something, you're probably not gonna get it. If you think you wanna put a little bit more money into the non-lapsing, but I gotta tell you, just sitting here looking over these numbers, if you try to nitpick 5% or 2% out of every one of these things to make $200,000,
We're not doing that.
It's not.
I understand.
We're
that, but
looking at
you-
big numbers.
Yeah, you're looking at big numbers, but I just,
Well, that
Kind of
was the
the bottom.
tuition, but that was why transportation went down too, because of the.
Right, but the two biggest numbers are the professional services at 94 and the tuition at 224 that I'm on now.
And the 94 is a BCBA, who serves students with behavioral needs and autism spectrum disorders.
well, I appreciate you answering.
And yes,
I
you
know
need,
they're gonna put you in.
yes, and you need to add transportation for these students too.
So I think the 313 and for 330 is kind of not budgeted. So what I would do is next week, if you have to ask for the money back, you'll be putting in these new budgeted kids because you now have the time to do that. So the number will be truly more represented on what your needs will be next year.
Did we ever get to use Steve?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I said I wanted to hold off and see what she had to say.
She just pulled the string on my back. I'm sorry.
So what I
I would
also.
rather make the decision tonight and have an answer next week so that we don't go 4 more weeks with special budget meetings, honestly, Ernie. If we wait until next week and then we make a decision, then we give them another week after that, as you said, we're gonna be into April.
And I'll be missing Jeff next week and Jeff and Dick on the 30th.
I can't make the 13th, although I might be able to make it
13th.
Virtually.
And I can't make the
Maybe, I don't know.
20th.
You're not the 20th.
It's easy just to let it float the way it is.
Do you mean 27th?
Not necessarily.
20th, isn't that a Wednesday?
Yes.
School break.
Well, I guess
There's
we
no
didn't
meeting
go
on
out
the
that
20th,
far.
it's school break. It's a school break, so it's the in-between the public hearing and the last workshop. We don't have a meeting because we're prepping for the public hearing.
But when is the last special budget meeting? Is the weekend before, the
The
13th?
13th, I believe.
Okay.
So you got
Jeff,
these two.
I think that, to speed this along, I'd like to make a motion to cut $100,000 from the Board of Education budget.
where'd you get 100?
Bird yelled it at me. We're down to 170. That leaves us about 30,000,
Well, I didn't,
but it doesn't.
I don't think you can focus in just on the tuition number and change the logic that's floating around. I think the consensus was 200 makes sense, and we can always vote to change that back to 100. If we get details next,
Okay, I just figured they might be able to find it and say, okay.
they might not.
This is true. So I started 100 and it doesn't have to be there. Somebody can make a motion to cut more.
Wait, can we do that?
If there's no second.
Okay, I guess we go around and take a temperature, and 3 or 4 people say one thing, and then you throw out a motion that says something different. That is like,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, but
Can I amend this?
Throw
Can
the
I
switch.
move to amend his motion?
only if he rescinds it.
Okay, I will rescind my motion.
I'd like to move to reduce the Board of Education budget by 200,000.
I'll second that. We've had discussion.
I think, to tell the truth, over the years, I've been on FiPAC. When people throw in numbers without really analyzing the numbers, we have professional people who give us numbers, and I don't have a problem with questioning their numbers and questioning where those numbers come from. But I do have a problem with people simply throwing out numbers. Kelly, that's what you're doing. You're throwing
You're
out
not
a
giving
number.
me credit. I've been sitting here reading these numbers, and that's how I came up with the number.
Wow.
That based on what Steven said about the new special education kids that we're gonna need based on last year's budget, the additional 170, that's how I came up with the
Well,
number. I didn't just pull it out of the air.
I'm not saying that I wouldn't agree to cutting the budget once I get more information from the Department of the Education. But at this point in time, I think it's premature to do that. I think we can ask Barbara to come back and respond to that down the road. But I think it's a mistake for us to vote on that at this point in time. That's all.
May I respond?
If you, yeah.
I feel like we don't have enough time to do it that way. I think we should do it the way we've always done it, which is make our decision and then let them come back to us with full faith that we will be open-minded to whatever they have to say next week. And I think the Board of Education has always done that. They've always gone and they've always come back with additional information. And we have been open-minded when we've listened to them and we have changed our mind. And I think they can have complete faith that we'll do that again this year. Because we've always done it.
Yeah, you're still confusing me, Dick. It seems like if we enact this or approve this motion, we are simply setting a timetable for when we get the information that you deem important. I'm not sure why you have a problem with that.
Can I ask, because that's exactly my question is, let's say we put it to a vote and it says, yes, we agree as a commission to ask the Board of Ed to reduce their by 200,000, then they have a week to respond and come back. That really has no substance other than if you don't come back and respond, then
Stands.
Stands.
So do I understand that right?
Yeah,
So it's not carved in stone that that's happening.
Right.
It's just an official notification to the Board of Ed that they need to do a little homework and come
based
back
on
next
what
week.
we've looked at, this is our gut feeling.
Okay,
and
yeah, I'm a freshman here.
it's okay.
Thank you. Okay.
I thought the board, the FiPAC board was going to submit questions to me as the acting superintendent regarding the numbers. I've never received any.
I'm confused because I'm told we can't ask about line items.
I was told that the
I think
questions would be
what,
submitted.
I think what we can ask the Board of Education to do, let me finish, is ask them what the impact on the education of Columbia, if we reduce the budget by $200,000. Now, I'm not saying we don't have control of the line items, and we're not gonna ask you line items, but we can ask you, I mean, it's our job, and I've been through, by the way, in the like 2005 to 2010, we had a lot of difficulty with the Board of Ed asking for too much money. And Ernie was one of the most important people in that time that got all of that under control, and we did. But I think rather than making a vote and saying that FiPAC feels that we should reduce the budget, we should simply ask them to come back and explain to us why we shouldn't cut the budget by $200,000. I don't know this need for that vote. But anyway, that's my opinion. That's all.
Okay, I'm gonna correct something you just said.
Okay.
You implied we can't ask about line items, and that's absolutely not true.
Okay, we can't control the dollar value.
We can't control line items, that's true. But anyway, keep going.
But we can ask about.
You can ask about it. If
Okay.
you need to ask, if the progression of a line item makes you question the budget in total, then yeah, ask that question. Okay, if you need that, an explanation of a line item to make a total informed decision, you can ask that question. The other false thing that we throw out is that FiPAC cannot change line items in the Board of Ed budget. We absolutely can. Doesn't make any sense for us to do that, because they can just say, I don't care how you distribute, FiPAC distributes the line items. We control how we spend the money. But it's a false statement to say that we can't change the line items. We can, it would be dumb, but
Okay.
Okay, Ernie, and actually I agree with that, and going back to what I said about back in 2005, 2010, that's exactly what was done here in Columbia, and we did question line items. In those days, the budget increase for Board of Education was like 7 or 8% a year, and it was crazy, it was ridiculous, and it was out of control. And I credit Ernie with getting that under control. But I do think that we need to respect people like Barbara and on the Board of Ed and Department of Education. And there's no reason why we can't just ask for more additional information, the impact our decision is gonna have. I don't know if we have to take a vote.
okay, we're gonna
Reduce
take
it
a
to
vote. We're gonna take a
$200,000.
vote. You already said that 3 or 4 times.
Okay,
We're gonna take a vote.
okay.
The reason, if you think about what our attendance is gonna be for the next month, that puts more pressure on us
Well, that's
to
true, the attendance is gonna be.
do something.
Right.
And again,
You've got 2 meetings to wrap this up.
Right, and if we don't vote tonight, we actually hurt the Board of Education because we give them less time to adapt. So I think voting now is actually better for them, so that they know what they're facing. And we'll be able to do it before, we only have 2 meetings left.
yeah, again, it still comes back to me that the proposal over here just sets a time frame for us, for you getting exactly what you say you want. And I'm not sure why. I don't think anybody intends it as an insult to any member of the Board of Education or to the Superintendent, when we say I looked at a bunch of numbers and I factor in what I know about MDR, and this is what I think we should do. Now, give us feedback on what that does to you, which is exactly what you're saying, except you're saying we should be more polite in asking them to give us feedback. And the problem with that is, or on the positive side, let's say we take a vote tonight and put something down for all the budgets and a proposed mill rate. If the Board of Ed and the superintendent are comfortable with what we said tonight, we are done. If we don't set a vote tonight, then we got at least 2 more weeks, or at least 1 more, maybe 2 more weeks.
1 more week from me anyway.
Well, there you go. I can do it by myself if you guys are gonna be here, but I just,
Fun, I'll be there.
all right, we got this under control. Anyway, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I think I did.
You seconded.
Yeah, you
You
second.
second it, Ernie.
Kelly motion.
A $200,000 reduction to the Board of Ed budget request. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
And that's it. Judy abstains. Okay. You understand that?
Board, on behalf of the Board of Ed, I will request that meeting.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you would like questions in writing submitted to you if we have them.
No.
You don't have to,
Okay.
but someone had said in the past that you would have submitted, you were to submit questions that I could have been prepared to respond.
Yeah. And
Well, if I wanted to know the teacher to student ratio and this and that, a few other things in there.
Somewhere, but yeah.
That was in the presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. What was I gonna say?
Sorry, Barbara, I haven't done written questions in the past, so I'm sorry if you thought that's what we were gonna do.
They told me that.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, if I had thought about it, I could have, knowing that you knew, it didn't really even occur to me that it would be hard for you to sort of be jumping into the middle just the first time, so sorry about that.
Suggested that.
No, I think I threw that out for the benefit of the
Yeah.
new people. I think some of us, like I have my own way of doing budgets, and I would never nitpick on line items. I mean, look at one and say, oh, that's funny, but you've never done a question, but you I just try to take a macro approach to this. People who haven't seen the budget before might have been confused, and I just said, if you have questions, that was for their benefit, and also so you didn't get blindsided in the middle of the meeting with stupid questions. So, again, there is nothing personal here. It's financial analysis from my standpoint, not sure for everybody else. And again, you have a chance to come back. Part of it, this is not set in stone. And I am not kicking you out, but that is the Board of Ed discussion. So like I did last time, if you don't want to sit through the rest of what's going on here, I appreciate you being here, and thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We need 2 more motions, one to approve the one selectment operating budget, and one to approve the allocation to the capital reserve account. We could probably do that in one motion. So approve those.
I only ask because I feel like I'm missing something.
We went through last time, everybody said we have no problem with it, right?
Well, I do have some problems with the capital, like the budgeting for the fire trucks 40 years out.
We had no problem with the Board of Selectmen budget, capital, Board of Selectmen capital.
Yeah, we put that on out for discussion, didn't we? I didn't.
Yes, but I had some issues with it. I
Well, why
mentioned those
didn't
issues.
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
Do you remember what they were?
well, primarily, I was concerned about on the capital budget, and I understand the reason, and there's good reason in considering what you need to do over a 30-year period.
Yeah,
I just don't like the idea of setting aside $40 a year for 20 years as opposed to waiting and doing larger sums like $100,000 a year for 6 years, like we did most recently. And I do know there's 2 schools of thought in it, and I know that there's some merit on both sides, but with interest rates so low, I just don't feel we should be doing it now.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna totally walk all over you.
Okay.
And if I may. Let's do this, since, you are already putting your ideas on the table, remember. Remember, that we get to vote, especially if the Board of Ed comes back next week, we get to revote that.
Right, we'll
If
definitely.
they don't come back next week, I'd like to have something on the table where we can say, okay, lots of people are missing meetings, but it doesn't matter because we're done. We're ready for the hearing. And I think I support what you're saying, but remember I brought that up 2 meetings ago, and I took a look at it, and remember last meeting I said, crap, look at all the other stuff out here. And the little tweak we do this time, it doesn't really make a big difference. I agree with you in principle. I really do. You gotta define, boom, what's the equipment? But at this point, I think, given our availability, maybe the best thing to do is just say, there are no giant items that we're pre-funding 40 years in advance. So I'm not totally uncomfortable with putting 10,000 somewhere in the SIP or wherever.
40,000 for 20 years, Ernie.
I know, Kevin.
Well, but if you don't do it, where would you put it?
Well, you would do it in year 20, you
Yes,
do 100,000 for a couple of years, instead of having 40 there, sitting there for years and years and years.
you're absolutely
And
right.
earning no interest, do it then,
No, that's our interest in the capital account. Yeah, but
negligible interest.
well, yeah, if you don't put it there, it's gonna earn the same interest in the general.
Or it could
account.
sit in someone's pocket and they could be earning interest in their own bank, and then they could pay the taxes in 20 years, when it's actually
If
due.
they're here.
So, no,
Okay.
I'm fine, Ernie, if you wanna accept the budgets as they are so that we can have something, because we can't always, after the town meeting, we're gonna have another vote. So we
No,
will have
after
one
the
more,
hearing,
that's what I mean, hearing, public hearing, sorry, not the town meeting.
well, this is for people who don't pay attention to the capital, so I have to make sure.
Yes, you're right,
Right, we're-
but we could, I mean, you can guarantee somebody's gonna complain about that. I can tell you who probably.
Yeah, I know, but that's okay.
So I don't mind if we accept it, knowing that we have another vote after the public hearing. But it'll be a little late, because then the town won't be able to do any adjustments, and they won't have a chance to come back to us if we did change it then, but,
What do you mean the town wouldn't?
well, what is that committee?
Basically, you'd ask us to cut the 40,000 that we're saving for each individual vehicle out. And there we would save the money that you're looking for, but in 6 years, and then in 8 years, and then in 12 years, when we need these pieces of equipment, we'd have to go to the town and say, I need $1 million, I need 800,000, I need 600,000. Or in this block of 6 to 12 years that you're talking about, I need 100,000 for each piece of equipment. So I'd probably have to increase taxes there for that, instead of laying it out all in a yearly expenditure to try and keep it without peaks and valleys. In 5 years, you can do what you want. I won't be sitting in this chair.
And most people would rather have their money and pay taxes later. A tax deferred is a tax saved. First thing I learned in my tax class.
Where are we?
In your tax class.
I don't pay taxes. Okay.
You wanna move to
You can see
that done?
that I beat you down, beat you into submission.
I will concede that I'll be in the minority, so.
Okay,
But you're right, we do only have 2 meetings. And we do have another opportunity for a vote if we need to take it, so.
yeah, we just gotta be practical. Is there a motion to, oh, I'm sorry, Art.
So as far as, I mean, we're gonna be voting on the town budget, so the overarching strategy. Have we come down to a conclusion regarding as far as that goes? Are we doing the flat tax, are we doing tapering, what are we doing?
I thought the general consensus was that we would do flat this year
Okay,
and study forward.
You're talking flat dollar amount, not flat mill rate. Oh, no, this rate, the new rate coming up will change.
Our aim is to
Get down to 25.
not have anybody's taxes increase.
The dollar
This
value,
year,
yes.
yes.
So the
Yes.
mill rate will go down.
The
The mill rate will go down.
Correct, okay.
But the dollar amount will stay. the
Yep,
same.
got that. That's that
Correct.
sheet impact on that.
So is there a motion to send the board of selectmen budget and the allocation of capital to the public hearing? Is it-
I'll make that motion to present the Board of Selectmen capital and Board of Selectmen appropriation budgets to the town.
I second.
Okay, I guess that was a motion to approve both those budgets for presentation in the, at the public hearing. We have a second. Any more discussion? Thank you, none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
Oh, we got four, okay. Do we have a page 31, Bev?
Yeah, this one I had for last time.
Five,
Yeah,
five.
You
I have my hand up.
want me
And
to
then
work
you
it out?
count.
Okay,
You want me to get it all updated for next week?
Count my vote.
get what?
Page
Page
31.
31, the whole packet ready, updated for next week?
Well, we have
Well,
one
we
more.
can't because we don't know if the border is gonna be.
Let's do this. You got your calculator? I have two calculators. Okay. Amount to be raised by taxes is 15,448. Because we reduced the board of ed budget by 200,000, the amount to be raised by taxes will be now what, 15,248. Where's my pen?
Second day.
15,248. That translates,
Anytime you want.
you know where I'm going, don't you, Bev?
Yeah, she's trying to figure out how much to take out of the fund balance.
Yeah,
It's $690,000, 700.
No, it's slightly more than that. 893.
For where?
okay, there are too many numbers in there.
General fund.
Okay, we need to tax the public 15,248,000. And seven, this translates into a mill rate of 15,248 divided by what's the value of 1 mil, 572.92.
No,
This is the.
mill's 572.92.
No,
Correct, 572.92.
yeah, so 15,248,107 divided by 570,292.
15,448, 107, divided by
That number. Value of 1 mil.
570,292 is 27.08.
Okay, 27.08. Now, when I did that nifty little thing trying to figure out what the equivalent mill rate was for last year, what did we come up with?
25.87.
We need to follow from the journal.
$25.87?
Yeah.
So 27.08 minus 25.87.
No, you need to borrow $900
0.21.
million.
A million.
Yeah. 1.21, and if you multiply that by 570,
570
huh?
1.21 reduction.
is 694, 653.
That's your number?
693,884.
And I got 609, 694653.
693.
Yeah,
Basically,
so-
what we're doing is at this, according to the numbers on this page, if you're gonna borrow any money from the fund balance or don't set aside any money from the fund balance, you'll see a tax increase equivalent to 1.21 mils. In order to avoid that tax increase, we need to restrict 1.2 mils within the fund balance, and the value of that 1.21 mils is one of these numbers.
Yeah, so it's almost 700,000.
Same number that we had last week.
About that, yeah.
So 700,000 is what it takes to absorb 1.21.
It always makes me nervous. You know, I did that thing and came up with the equivalent mill rate. I hope everybody looked at that and made sure I didn't screw
I
anything.
think you're right. I haven't looked at that before.
Good. So basically what we're saying is we're authorizing them to make this document show a mill rate of 27.08. Rather than us trying to figure out who's up by a decimal point, why don't we just say that that's better?
27.08.
Yeah.
Get the taxes,
Wait a
but
minute.
it's this year minus
Are you sure?
200,000.
No.
That's kind of 26.4.
What?
That's taking
Correct.
out
We're
200,000.
looking at
before that.
25.
I'm sorry, make it show 25.87.
Yeah.
Right.
25.87.
$200,000
It's the fifth, the
decrease.
And we're saying that should come out to about a $694,000 or $694,000 borrowing from the general fund
Okay, take,
restriction,
Redistribution.
whatever.
Do you still need to take that much if you in fact do reduce the board of ed budget by
Yes.
200,000?
Yep,
So that's factoring in that 200,000.
correct.
If we didn't, we'd have to take 900
Nine.
from the undesignated fund.
Okay.
You want this again?
yes, because right now I'm at 25.52, but that's based on what?
25.
Record, but yeah.
That's close, close enough.
Yeah, horseshoes. So basically what we're saying, if the board of ed doesn't come back next week, we are all set to submit budget to the hearing. It shows a mill rate of 25.87 and shows this change should reflect a $200,000 reduction in the board of ed budget. Everything else as presented.
And if they do,
So we might be done. If not, if they come back, then we get to re-vote. And we may or may not change.
Make a motion.
Huh?
Need a motion?
I don't know. You look like you want to make a motion. so-
We don't need to make a motion. We don't need to make. But I think we need to make a motion to take 600.
oh, not yet.
No.
Not yet, we can do
We have
that
to wait
next
until
week or the week after.
we have finalized the BOE, right?
Huh?
As a courtesy.
No, we can make the motion that this is what we'll do. And we reserve the right to change it a week from now.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to use $700,000 or
Whatever the number is.
whatever the number is from the undesignated balance fund to offset the mill rate.
Down
Did I get that?
Should make it
25.87.
25.87.
87.
Yeah, producing a mill rate of 25.87, and that's what we will send to the public hearing. Yeah. Unless we change it next week. So,
Second,
Did you get that?
any more
motion?
discussion?
I think it's premature to do this, and I think we
Okay,
should do
you said- you said that.
Ernie, let me finish.
No, you already said it.
And I think we should wait for Judy Jordan to give her input.
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Vote. So Judy's not here. Her vote, how much difference does it make? I appreciate Judy. I value her opinion. But again, look at the schedule.
I know.
I will be here every meeting.
I'll be here next week also.
Well, then the week after that, you won't be, and so
I
we
know.
can't defer stuff into
I
that week.
know, and I know there's a good reason to move forward.
No, I'm not rushing strictly because of that. I'm taking a read on what we can accomplish with what we have.
Jeff, what meetings are you missing for sure?
Well, I won't be here. It doesn't mean I'll miss the meetings.
Oh, you might come on remote.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll do my best to line up. But we haven't called, we called the vote, but we haven't had.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
I'll go ahead to.
Thank you. Opposed, abstentions? What was that twitch? Nothing. Okay, now, here's the way it works. We have a meeting scheduled for next week. Again, the Board of Ed has the option of saying, we can live with this, and if they do, we're done until the public hearing.
Which is what day?
It's advertised, 8 years for page 1.
Mark, would any public hearing may?
Oh, excuse me.
April 27th.
April.
Okay, are we done?
That's, I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
I was,
Good draw. You're dead. Anyway.
Wait a second, there's one of these that's a Tuesday.
That's
Is
the
that the-
town vote,
That's the
town
town
vote
vote,
May.
yeah.
All right.
May 10th.
Give me your hand, I mean,
May 10th, the town vote.
Bad.
it's in the package. Okay, no vote, we're done.
Okay. So we adjourned that.
Yes, you did.
Can you see the glare? You get that out, adjournment at 8:26.
So one
Recording
is
on it.